All right, good morning. It is February 24th, 2025, 9:02 a.m. We're meeting with IAFF for continued negotiations. My name is Nikki Powell, HR Director.
Eric Gilmore, Public Safety.
Adam Harrison, Fire Chief.
West Monroe County Administrator.
Janice Floyd, Deputy Director, HR.
Debbie Bowers, Assistant County Administrator.
David Carviosa, Local 4131. Josh Hunter, 4131.
Justin Markham, 4131.
And Nick Grady at 4131.
Hand these to y'all and go through what we went over last time and any changes that are referenced there. So Article 8, the last thing we were discussing was 8.034, and I think the agreed upon was 7 and 24. So that's what we've got in this proposal. Article 10, 10.01, the second paragraph, we agreed to have a discussion. We did have an administrative discussion, and we have left that at the 12-hour increments.
So that didn't change from the last proposal, correct?
Correct. I'm gonna skip Article 12 because it's all in the appendix. Article 13, 1301A, what we changed to 5 years. Chief, remind me what else we changed. to
Yeah,
this
so
one.
we changed the 5 years. It was back and forth. From the original proposal, it included the driver positions, and so there was a little bit of confusion there between the 4 and the 5 years. So we kept it at the 5 years, which is what it originally
This
was.
essentially reverted back to the MOA that we have.
Correct. Yeah, so it went back to the 5 years there, and the 2 years for the driver, which is basically what we currently have. And then we got rid of the equivalents. That's always been a confusion in the past, is what is equivalent, so we just stated that you're gonna have the certificate instead of an equivalent. And that's in reference to your fire officer certificates and stuff like that. I think
Okay.
that's it on that one, yeah.
Article 16 has the MOU for the uniforms built into this final agreement. Article 19, this is going to be the biggest change. We did revert back to the prior language, and that is due to the wage proposal that you're going to see here. To accommodate the wage proposal, we had to make a change there.
Bless you.
Article,
Hold on just a sec.
So that's essentially how it's being paid right
yes,
now.
yes.
So 12 hours for each 24 hours.
Correct. And the strike through in 19.03 was basically
Old
something that was
language.
old.
Right, because it was making up
2021
for
calendar,
the
so.
additional-
Right.
So you get whatever holidays the county gets, you guys get, and I think there's 14 now, if I'm not
Correct.
mistaken. Yeah. Article 20, we've left this at the 50 per shift. I think we provided all the information you guys asked for. You didn't bring any other proposals on this, so this is the same thing we've pushed across the table.
Yeah,
last
y'all
time,
wanted
time
clarification
before.
on the, after the 14 days, it reverts back to that class of pay, and that's written in here in the underlined section. So it's the $50 up to the 14 days, anything after the 14 days reverts back to the higher class.
Yes, yes. If they shifted up to the century, that's considered a shift.
Yep, and I believe that language is in here.
Yeah, we adjusted all of that.
And that's, okay, so just so we're understanding the interpretation of what you guys had there. If a person is assigned to act for,
One full shift is $50 per shift up to 14 days. If they go past that 14 days, then they go ahead and get
and what are you constituting as a shift?
a full shift, either 24 for a 24 or 9 for a 9.
So
And that
24,
doesn't
not the
need to be-
48, it's 20, the 24.
Right.
Yes, 24 or 9 if you're going to century.
So the 9, but that doesn't need to be indicated in there. You don't, you
We
feel comfortable with that?
changed it to per shift, so that should cover
Should
any
cover-
shift.
Okay.
Yeah. So then,
Is that not going to be too laborious for, a person who is assigned to act, and then for that 9, and then they return the remaining 24? 'Cause, you know, that happens sometimes. How would we? I mean, I would assume it really wouldn't be much difference necessarily.
I think you said Camp would do it. That was the last thing we discussed, was Camp would have to be the one managing.
Yeah, because there are
it's
manual
under a
inputs,
lot
there
of
is no
people.
way to mark and tell a staff that that takes place, other than it shows that move of that
Well, you
individual.
can put a note on that shift, right? So.
Yes,
time
so
card,
you could put a note on it, and then they would pick up and have to add that $50, so.
Okay. That's gonna be probably the brainy question that comes out of that.
Sure.
So then Appendix D, you're gonna see a wage proposal. Just to speak on this for a couple minutes, the proposal that you guys put across the table came to around $7 million. Obviously, $7 million was not something the county could accommodate. So we went back to the drawing board, we took some of those market value assessments, we also did some of our own research. One of the things that I do want to point out is we are one of the only FRS agencies in the area. So FRS, we have to pay almost 35% of your salary to FRS every year. The other independent fire districts average around 10% that they pay to a defined contribution plan. The city has a grandfathered defined contribution plan, and their new employees do go under FRS, but that is a large portion of your budget and something that we have to accommodate for when we do any type of wage increase, because that's, like I said, about 35% of salary that we have to pay to FRS. Some of those other fire districts that we looked into, they had caps on the salaries. And what I mean by that is they had true caps. So you guys had something in your proposal with a cap, but but you had the caveat that if you were maxed out, you still got it. We're not applying any caps at this time, but those other fire districts that do apply a cap, if they give a 3% and you're at the cap, you don't get it. So this is what we have. This comes to about 1.7 million, just between 1.5 and 1.7 million. We're gonna, my understanding is having to pull from reserves to cover this. So that is the best we have at this time. If you are already at that salary for whatever reason, everybody in the unit is guaranteed a 2%. That is all the articles.
All right, so we discussed the pay proposal, the last, it was 4.4, so how did we go from that to 7?
That was 4.4 for the initial implementation. That didn't include the 15% that you guys wanted with that, so I added the 15%, which was about 3 million.
So the 15% was just if you were at the top, that you were guaranteed 15%, basically. If you go into that chart, which I'm pretty sure everybody went in that chart, it was just a guarantee. If you were at the top already, you got something. But I'm almost.
Now, I asked for some clarification last time in the session, and based on the clarification you guys gave me, I redid the numbers and I came back with the 7
The 15% is not for people going into the chart. If you sat into the chart, right, you went to that pay scale, or you went into the chart of the pay scale, the 15% was just to guarantee somebody if they were at the top of the scale.
Well,
already.
regardless, the implementation of the initial proposal without any 15% applied was 4.4 million.
Okay.
So
Was there any appetite for the pay scale? Because I don't see a scale or anything like a wage progression or anything like that.
we don't know what our budget's gonna be next year. So again, we're pulling from reserves to pay for
I
this
understand that,
year.
but so back in
Once-
21, when we
Once
signed that
someone
contract.
has some additional discussions, we possibly get an MSBU in place, something like that, then we can have further wage discussions. This is what we can do right now at this time.
Did you even apply the 1.7 to our wage scale and see what it looked like with the wage scale?
I would.
Did you put the wage scale we presented, did you say, okay, 1.7, this is what the wage scale would look like as an option? Because that's something very important. We made that very clear.
To take 1.7 million and then apply it to a wage scale?
To the wage scale we presented, what would 1.7, what would those numbers look like?
I'm not 100% sure what you're asking, because if I take what you gave me and apply it to what you gave me, it's 4.4 million.
Correct. So that's 4.4 million. So what is that wage scale we presented to you? What does that look like with 1.7? So does it just the starting instead of $17.99, does it make it $14 and then scale out from there to adjust the cost?
I think the reason that we cannot apply that wage scale is because then it's a recurring cost. And what I mean by recurring cost is every year you have people that are moving and that the budget cannot budget appropriately based on those without having a source of income, a source of revenue, revenue.
But you do understand how we don't necessarily agree with that when there are recurring costs every year. Cost of doing business goes up every year, right, for various things. We know that, and even with salaries, it's gonna go up every year. The minimum wage law has an impact on that at least for another couple of cycles, right? With what's coming out of GR to float those, we understand the burden that you guys are in, right? MSBU is very fixed, it adjusts very slowly compared to ad valorem and all that. We're all on the same page there, and that's why we've been preaching for years now. We gotta change the way we're doing business, right? And I know we all know that's been a struggle and a challenge for you guys. We understand the challenges, previous, administration and things like that. It's a rapidly moving target. And that was our hope with, and where we tried to exhibit some patience in this past year with so much potential with what could happen at the very top. We're past that point now. We have a new board, potentially some new ideas, new points of view or whatever, so may find different support than what you've experienced, the brick wall you've experienced in the past. And so that's where we were encouraging those conversations to happen. And don't really have any indication or feel like those conversations are happening. So that's where we're sitting here really just kind of confused and frustrated on what's going on. Why are those conversations not happening? It's easy to say that we don't have the money, we don't have the budget, we can't calculate these things. Well, right, you got to go have those conversations and see where we're going to go from there. Whether it continues to come out of GR, or we can make some serious headway on the adjusting the MSBU. But I think you all know that it would take a pretty significant adjustment to the MSBU, which runs off a whole nother set of issues, right? We're all on the same page there. So, while yes, the scale, it's of course fair and honest of you to say that we can't bargain a scale because we don't have that guaranteed funding in place to identify that stuff. It's not accurate to say we can't do that because it's a moving target. It's a moving target every year. Those costs adjust every year. So you put a scale in, it should be easier than to budget what those salaries are because it's a defined scale. It's not this moving target to where, hey, let's do 3%. You get a commissioner up there that says, I want to do 8% for all county employees, and now you guys are scrambling trying to figure that out. Well, hey, the firefighters are covered. They got this. Of course, we're going to argue that side of it. If you put a scale in place, as a contractual scale, that should make budgeting easier because you know what that target is. It's more difficult for us to come back in a couple of years and say, we're feeling like 10% this year. What do you think? And no, man, you got a scale right here. This is what we're following. And you guys all understand that.
So I would say the discussions regarding the MSBU are more open and serious at this point in time. We have some options that we will put in front of the board, in front of the commissioners. We're already having some of those discussions. I've had a pretty in-depth discussion with Kohler last week, Commissioner Berry as well. And I do think there's some appetite to bring forth an adjustment to the MSBU. The question, and it'll be strictly the board's decision, is do we do this all at one time or do we phase it in over a 3-year period? Personally, I like to do it all at one time. So there will be some discussions. You will see that item on the board.
Well, historically, their ideas of phasing the MSBU have failed. And I've been here long enough to remember the last time we were going to step the MSBU up, and it didn't happen. And it put the burden back on staff and administration to try to. And I'm pretty confident that was the beginning of money starting to come out of GR to fill the delta. It was right around that time frame when that stuff started. And it obviously has not started to the tune of what approximately a third of our budget is coming out of GR. So I know we all understand that burden, that makeup, to talk about a $5 or $10 increase, something, minimal to the MSBU is frankly, it's laughable, and I don't mean to be rude about that, but it's laughable at this point, because if you're trying to make up that kind of headway, a $5 or $10 increment,
So what we're looking at is we talked about, I think the initial, previous discussions that you were referring to, I know Commissioner Burgash had a thought where we'd increase MSBU, but then we would decrease something else. And it would basically, it was a wash. It really benefited nothing.
right.
So I don't think that's the discussion this year.
Sure.
I think it's, there's one plan that's 33, 33, and 33. So at the end of the third year, you basically have doubled the 125 assessment basically. And that would also include a modification to the beach and how they're paying. Because previously, right now, I don't think they're really paying for their service. So we would also adjust that as well. But the thought is, all right, let's just go $100, go from 125 to 225 per dwelling unit. And however it affects the beach and everything, all at one time. I have some commissioners that would rather phase it. Then I have one, at least one, that would really just do it.
Rip the Band-Aid off.
Just rip the Band-Aid off and do it. But what's not being talked about is a scenario where you increase MSBU, you decrease this, and it turns out to be.
And that's
a
great,
wash.
that's positive, right?
So that is a more beneficial conversation than we've been able to have since I've been here anyway, in this role. And I know it is tough, and I know you got two that are running for re-elections. I mean, they're all running for re-election all the time. I mean, it is what it is. Even the ones that say they're not going to run again, and we'll see.
My question is, what was the feedback from the commissioners on the wage progression scale?
The only conversation that I've heard personally is the $13 an hour. How does it work out? Some are at 13, some are at 17, some are.
So there was no talk about our wage progression scale we put forward. That's what I'm hearing from the commissioners. There's no direction from them to you about our wage progression scale. So what I heard is you didn't present our proposal to the commissioners to get feedback from that. That's what I
The
just
new
heard.
proposal was presented to the commissioners and gave them an open door for discussion, and this is where we landed.
So, okay. Again, and I appreciate the conversation with MSBU. I understand how we're funded, but we're also funded a third out of the GR right now. That's been a commitment over the past couple of years. You committed to us in the last contract in 21, which was quite frankly a laughable pay raise. We were way behind then. We told you then we're going to be way behind now. 4 years, you've secured $1.7 million. That's $425,000 a year. How
I
we?
think also, just like to point out, I believe it was 2022, that summer of 2022, we did try to take something to the board and it did not get voted on. So we did try to take, I believe it was an MSTU at the time, you'll have to correct me, that did not get voted on by that board. So with the new board members in place, we have been having those conversations to try to move a funding source along. So I think that piece does get forgotten, that we did present to the board in summer, fall of '22, and it got voted against. So as far as securing revenue, it's been an ongoing push. With a new board now, I think that we have the support to continue those conversations.
Just doesn't seem like there's a plan. It's just like the last 3 times I've said, hey, what's the plan? There is no plan. You just said that you're gonna have to pull this out of reserves to fund that pay proposal, meaning there is no plan. And what we presented was a pay scale, a
I
plan.
wouldn't say there's not a plan. There's a plan.
Well, just
but
from a
that has
layperson
to be-
and dumb fireman over here, that doesn't seem like a plan. You're having,
The revenue source has to be approved. That is the end of that is the only way we get any further plan. This is a one-time deal. You will also get whatever we get in October. This is the one-time deal. Once we get a revenue source in place, we can absolutely have further conversations. We can look at what
That's
those
supposed to
other
happen
places
back in
are
21 as well.
doing, but if we can't secure that revenue source with our board, then you are correct, there is no plan, because we can only work within our means. We can only work within our budget. I also asked you guys to schedule a meeting with budget. Have you tried to do that yet, to understand that further? I don't think anybody has scheduled a meeting.
No, we've not scheduled, but you referring to Stephen
Correct.
specifically?
Yes.
Okay, so,
I've asked-
and I would ask the question there then, what really would be the purpose of us scheduling a meeting with Stephen?
Simply to understand the budget further, to understand your revenue source, to understand the,
So our questions would then be, when you bring in close to $20 million over projected the last couple of years in a row, what happened to all that money? It gets spent. In reality, those things, when those things come in, they get earmarked. They get wrapped in hold. That's what happens. They get assigned. Because when you see that throughout the year, when projects come up or various things happen, and you need to generate funds for something, whether it's a new project, it's a fix to something, those emergency situations happen, funding always turns up somehow or another. Well, where did that funding come from? And I know that's a lot of work from you guys by having those conversations and moving some stuff around, but you're gonna have a hard time convincing us that this is a 100% zero-based budget. Every single dime is accounted for and allocated from the previous year's budget, proposed budget, and all that stuff. So when to say that when we feel like there's money available, that's where it's coming from. So to have that conversation with Stephen, yeah, while I feel like it sure would be educational, it still lands us in kind of the same spot. You know, we still have the same question, where do we go from here? To adjust the scale, while, yes, seeing those starting rates adjust up is good. What was the rough percentage increase from the current starting to the new proposed starting? He was doing it, but he's talking now, so.
I had it on one of my spreadsheets because we've done multiple assessments to kind of get where we are, and
So did you come up with a percentage increase?
Close.
It's rough.
just under 25%.
So
Okay, so how do you, no,
yes, the starting wage is atrocious, okay? And I understand where this puts us in comparison starting, but there's no progression. If you look at everybody else except for, I believe, one has a progression, right? Also, the guys that have been here for 10, 15, 20 years and get their face kicked in with this stuff are getting 2%. So the guys that just walked in the door, you get 25%. Thanks for coming to work here. You've been here 20 years, hey, you just get 2%. It's okay. That is a huge problem, and you're compressing the ever-loving hell out of this. So now we're going to have to further decompress that, in a year or two, when funding gets, approved or something, and it's still not going to be enough. So we're trying to present a holistic plan and an actionable plan, whether it's what the numbers we put across the table is that scale is extremely important because it decompresses everybody, right, and gives a progression. So that is the importance of it and why we're so hard on that point right now. And if you look, everybody, I believe, except for, I said, one or two, have some sort of wage progression. Let me see here, actually.
That's what I mean about not having a plan. The 2% for me on there, that's not a plan. It would be 2% for him, that's not a plan.
I'll just be honest with you. I'm one of those guys that have been here 8 years. I've gone up. I'm making right now $15.53 an hour. This obviously would put me at $16.58 is what you're telling me. I'll be honest.
1626.
$16.26, but with the 2%.
So you'd be making the same as a
I'll be
one-year
making
guy.
the same. I don't feel valued. As an employee, I'll be honest with you. I don't feel valued. We all know that the cost of living is atrocious right now. The inflation is crazy. I know that we have a new government in place, a new president, he's making things move, but the prices of stuff are going up, Prices for cars, prices for houses. In order to make a decent living in Escambia County, we're not with the times right now. And that's just speaking from my perspective, and I've been here 8 years. I love this department, I love the employees, but it doesn't pay my bills.
I did another analysis, that was some questions that were asked of me with an annual salary of somebody who's been here for at least 1 year. So you had to have had at least 1 full year of employment across the county, annual salary of about $41,000. 11% of my workforce was below $41,000. I had 0 firefighters below the $41,000 in that assessment. So the assessment was asked, $41,000, which is close to $20 an hour for a 2080 worker.
A 40-hour work week employee.
A 40-hour work week employee, but just an annual salary, run the annual salary, and what percent of our workforce is below that?
So you could just drop our hours down to 40 hours a week.
So if I paid you as a 9-hour employee on the rate that was
Or
given, then yes.
a 16-year-old lifeguard, but we can, gets paid 19-something an hour.
Look,
16 years old, high school kid.
Let's take the caucus real quick. Let's talk about these proposals real fast. Let's come back. Obviously, like the pay, we're gonna have to really work on that one, and see where it's at. And let's get these other ones hammered out. Let's get the business done, and we have more conversation on wages.
Sure, can I say one thing before we do that?
Absolutely.
So, I was telling somebody over the weekend, we had like a $748 million budget. Out of that $748 million, we control 1/3 of that money. 1/3. The rest of it goes to the constitutional officers, including the sheriff, tax collectors, property appraisers, circuit court. You have state mandates, unfunded state mandates that we are bound, we have to pay. FRS is a huge hit every year. So when it's all over and said and done with, I have 1/3 of that number to work with. Now, you're right, and a couple of years back, our ad valorem increase was significant. Last year, it was about 11 million. This year, maybe we're fortunate, it might be 5 or 6 million over last year's ad valorem. So every year, as the housing market's leveled out, you guys do this. Now, I don't think you're done firefighters, by the way. The ad valorem, increase in ad valorem is not what it was the year before, certainly not what it was 2 years ago. So those are some challenges that we have. Would I love to have a plan that meets everybody's needs? Absolutely. And I know you've heard that. I know you've heard the MSBU speech. I know you're tired of hearing it, and I don't blame you if I was you. I'd probably be tired of hearing it too. When we sit down, I'm having to adjust some personnel stuff in the fire in order to pay for this as well as reserves. I'm not saying you guys aren't valuable. I'm not saying I don't appreciate what you guys do. You do a dangerous job. I'm telling you that. I don't know if you believe me or not, but I'm saying we're doing all I can do right now to fund this, what we're pushing across the table. I get it's not satisfactory to you. I'm sorry. But I also have another session later on in the week with another group. I've got another session with another group. And then I have all the other employees. They'll be lucky to get 2%, 1%. Honestly, that's where we're at. And I hate it's that way. But right now, that's where I'm at.
I want to add, I think when we talk about what's the plan, right? You said you're having to pull from reserves to be able to put this across the table, which means that's a savings account, it's not a recurring cost. Would it be fair to say it that way, frame it that way?
Yeah, and I would say that the reason y'all have that reserves is y'all done very well at managing your budget.
Well, and you said in a previous session on the call when it was that we discussed that budget and how you guys have been able to grow the reserves back for the county, which is it's a notch in your belt, right? But if you're pulling from that, then where's that reoccurring?
Pulling from
right?
fire reserves.
Fire reserves.
So you're not even pulling out GR
You
reserves.
have about 4 to 5 million in fire reserves. That will help pay for this. But there are, there's still going to be $10 million worth of GR.
Regardless, it's still a savings
That
account, right?
goes to that.
So either he has the burden of cutting other things, bouncing the budget around to put that back, so it kind of turns it into a recurring thing, or it dwindles and it's an issue, and we still got to borrow from mom and dad out of GR, right? So if that's the case, then why are we stuck with just the fire reserve and not looking at the larger available pot that's there? And in order to do that, I understand that means you got to go talk to the commissioners to get approval for that. You've had the opportunity to have those conversations, you haven't done it yet. That's where that frustration is.
Numerous conversations.
Well, so you say we're fire reserves, right? We're pulling this out of fire reserves. If I'm not mistaken, in the last meeting that just happened, Commissioner Lumen May stated, it was a Chappie James conversation. There's plenty of money in the reserves. If we need to do this, we just make it happen. We just got to say we're going to make it happen, right? Am I correct in that statement?
He has made that statement.
Yes, he has. Okay, so that means there's money in those reserves. Why can't we put a plan forward, figure out how to fund what we can afford, what the commissioners are willing to pull out of that instead of fire reserves, or a combination of both, and see if we can get a wage progression plan and decompress everybody that's been compressed, and give us some sort of plan to put forward that we can use as a recruitment and retention tool. So we got guys coming up that are gonna be looking. Like I said, I made that point when I stood in front of the dais there, that we've lost 2 guys, a 17-year guy's leaving, right? A 2-year guy's leaving, making 17 grand more starting and working less. So it's,
So what I would propose, again, this is a one-time, right? This is just for what we can do right now. We've got to get the MSBU's done. And then I would propose that we have continued labor management sessions, looking at what these other entities do. We've been able to pull some information. My understanding from Chief Harrison is you guys have a lot easier access to that information.
would you like to know what Midway's about to go to? They're
Well,
gonna go
we
17
can-
plus and 19 plus starting.
We can have those continued labor management sessions, work together on what a plan would look like, but that's gonna be a year from now, right? But I'm saying we'll have the continued conversations. This is right now. This is what we're giving you today. This is a huge increase for your staff. And then
It's not a huge
we
increase. It's a
continue
huge
to go-
increase for a select number of people, the very beginning people, right? This man's been here 8 years and is gonna get less than $1, whereas the brand new guy's gonna get dollars. What does that say to the 20-plus year guy that hasn't got anything like that ever?
Unfortunately, and I will just say, and I know you guys like to say you're different, but that's how we are across the county right now. We have not been able to have the funding for a plan that,
How do you know what funding you need if you don't have a plan? Because clearly you don't have a plan. So how do you know what to increase the MSBU to? How do you have an educated discussion on that if you don't know where we're gonna be in the next year? You're doubling the MSBU might not be enough. It might be too much. How do you know?
well, we have your plan that you presented. We also have some of the other plans that we've taken a look at. This is what, like I said, this is today. This is what we're offering today. This is not what we're offering 3 years from now. This is not what we're offering next year. This
Well,
is today.
we're just trying to make sure that as we move forward, y'all can hit the mark on the MSBU. That was the whole purpose for putting together a wage progression plan so that you know what to ask for to the commissioners to increase the MSBU to, so we're not back in this same boat in 3 more years. Because that looks like the road we're heading down.
It's a common, when you, and you all know this, when you negotiate labor agreements, sometimes they negotiate a scale. You have a large career path scale, and maybe there's, throughout the years, you negotiate slight increases based on CPI, all this other variable stuff, right? Or you get other units that'll bargain for the life of the contract. So maybe it's a, 10% each year, 10.86, something along those lines. Of course, Salt City, Pensacola, something like that. They had a large percentage up front, it tapers down. So our issue is, we can't even throw on the table and counter back and say, if the scale is just unachievable, that's too far out, too long range, we're bickering too much about the steps and percentage and all that other mess. We can't even throw out and say, hey, we want 10% there, let's move to this, year 2, let's do an additional 8% across the board, year 3, and 8% across the board. That's something that you could calculate and project, but we can't even have that conversation, that dialogue, because you're telling us that it's unknown. We don't know what we're gonna get. So how are we supposed to negotiate this in good faith? I mean, we hear what you're saying. We run the numbers as what we can do right now. Great, we've made it very clear, not just this session, but the last decade at least, where we're placing the value on a scale, or at least getting into a practice that we know every time we sit down, in Escambia County, we're gonna do business where we negotiate the life of the contract. So we know that we should come and offer X percentage, we should run our figures and project and predict what the fire service is gonna look like in 3 years' time. So here's the percentages we're looking to keep up with. Maybe it works in our favor, maybe it bites us in the butt. That's the nature of the beast. We can't even have that dialogue because we don't know what we're coming back with. And in our opinion, we can have that conversation. We absolutely can. Every time we're short, it's GR's carrying the burden right now. We know that. So we can have that conversation, it just takes making that commitment to something. Why, we don't collectively understand why that is such a significant burden. With previous boards, understand how that's been a problem. You have a different board now. You have different votes now. And frankly, until there's an executive session or until it becomes clear the position of the 5 commissioners that it is similar to previous boards, it's going to be very difficult for us to bite off and believe, and especially the rest of our membership, that it's still the same, we're still in the same, game. It's hard to get behind that. So I hope you guys can understand that. I can tell you the entire line officer staff, going back to this, because I would imagine, other than potentially some like 1 year, maybe 2 year lieutenants, it's probably a smaller group that are below that.
There was about 17.
17? Okay, so about a
Rest
third
of the promoted list.
roughly? Okay, so then you're gonna have, we're fixing to do promotions too. So that's gonna take brand spanking new guys and run them up, I would say equivalent to probably an 8-year lieutenant, somewhere right close to that. That's a pretty substantial compression of your line officers. I don't see line officers wanting to accept this in any way, shape, or form.
From an HR
Same with some senior
standpoint,
firefighters.
and I got Janice sitting here, from an HR standpoint, I can tell you, we have done scale after scale after scale. We've reached out to county after county after county, hey, y'all went to $18 an hour, how'd you combat compression? We didn't. So the answers that we're getting back from other counties, because we want to combat compression, we want to see how can we do a proposal that makes sense, that doesn't cost the county millions of dollars. When we reach out to these other counties and these other areas, again, a lot of these on your list, they're independent fire districts, so they have their own revenue source. But when we're looking at other county municipalities and talking with them, they're not doing it either. So
Right, but
it's not that we don't
when you call
want
somewhere and
to.
say, hey, you're going to 18 an hour, you're talking about firefighters.
No,
They're
just
correct.
in
I can
general,
promise you,
had
there is
a
not
couple
a
of,
lieutenant or a captain in the fire service in this area that's making $18 an hour. I can promise you that with full certainty. There is
Well, no,
not.
I'm just saying in general, like.
That's the
So
point.
you
counties
can't
are
speak in
reaching out
generalities though,
to-
Nikki, that's the point. Like that's a very generalized statement and it's not applicable to this
Well,
situation.
then, this isn't applicable at all, because these are all independent fire districts.
That's what
Okay,
we're
so do
competing
you want us
with.
to look at other county organizations across the state then? Because we can start looking at counties in South Florida that,
The further you go south, the more
How
they
do you-
get paid, a lot more.
Tell you what, set that to the side. Like Justin said, we'll come back to it.
All right, we'll take a call, so we'll do these other ones and then figure out costs.
Can I say something real quick? Just to add, from my perspective, I'm new to this, I've only been here 8 years, and I say only 8 years. But what we're trying to capture here with this pay scale, just so you guys can understand, is the future. I'm looking towards the next 25 years. I know we just made 25 years as a department, career department, which is a great accomplishment, but we're looking towards the future. I'm trying to secure, a lot of guys that are in my shoes are trying to secure, what does my retirement look like? What does the future of the department look like? Because right now, it's like these guys are emphasizing, there is no plan, there is no game plan. So of course, I'm looking in, other guys are looking in other areas, they're looking at like, we do good work here. You guys say it all the time, good, tremendous work. We go to a lot of fires. You guys have said it before, we have culture and all that stuff, but at the end of the day, those guys know it does not pay my bills, and the future is looking more expensive every year, and our future is a big question mark, unfortunately. You gotta understand that. So I just want to emphasize, like, the whole point of the pay scale is to secure the future, to capture the talent that we have currently, because we're gonna lose it.
And I think for what I was saying is, from an HR perspective, we support a pay scale of that nature, but when we're trying to think outside the box and think, how did other agencies do this? How did they present this? How did they get it through their budget? We're asking those questions, and we're not getting answers that really help us. And that's what I'm, saying, as far as, unless we make headway with the budget side of things, we support a pay scale of some nature. And we've looked at that and we've done those analysis, and at the end of the day, when we're trying to get there, working with our neighboring counties, municipalities, even those down south, is, oh, well, we just moved everyone to 18. So those are the feedback that we're getting when we say, okay, this is the cost that we've come up with. Okay, we can't do that, we don't have the money. What did other agencies do? How did they get there? So that's why I said we're not that we're not supportive, because we are absolutely, and we're absolutely supportive of our first responders. It's just trying to get us there. So I think like Wes said, let's set that aside, take your caucus, and come back and have further discussion. All right, I started the recorder, we're back from caucus.
All right, so, I don't know, sign these copies?
Yeah, if
Okay,
good. Go ahead.
so we went ahead and signed Article 8 for leaves, with that sick being, where it's at. We signed miscellaneous benefits and the outclassification pay.
Okay,
So,
let me pop over to the notes before we talk about the other ones.
you're fine. 13 should be an easy one, so I'll go to that one. So, removing the or equivalents, right?
Give me 1 second, sorry.
No, that's fine.
Or-
So like, yeah, for qualifications lieutenant, for say fire officer, 1 certificate or equivalent. And then you have it in the or equivalent for bonus points.
Yep.
I think we had a good thing we established with that task book for the equivalent. I think we can leave that in, but to get bonus points on your test, having the actual certificate. So dropping the or equivalent from the bonus points and just having the certification, but leaving the or equivalent in that line item, because we have a good established or equivalent, right? You've had all the classes, you've completed the task book, you can test for that right now, right? I think that's a good equivalency. And it goes into further down the line when we talk about battalion chiefs. So you left the or equivalent for bachelor's or years of experience, the equivalency there, right? So why can't we maintain those or equivalencies for those officer certifications, which gives us even further? We got a hard, equivalency with that task book, right, in the state of Florida. Because it says you completed all the training to be able to obtain that. But if you're going to get a bonus point, yeah, keeping that, you must have that certification to get bonus points. That's what they're for, because it's giving you the bonus for doing those things.
So the actual paper on hand will give you bonus points, just equivalency for just those tests.
Right.
Yeah, because that's something we started this year. It was the first year.
Correct, and I think that's a great way for us to establish that equivalency and I'll make sure we have a good pool of people to pull from, right? You're not pulling 5 or 6 people that could open that pool up to 15 or 16, so you have a better candidate pool.
Instead of using the word equivalent, if we're going to do that, I want to go back and say the task book must be completed. It has to be specific to what it is.
Sure,
Instead of
like I
saying
said-
an equivalent there, it's hard to say what an equivalent would be for the bachelor's degree or something else like that. Trying to look at what it
Right, and
is.
she stated that last, I think it was 5 years for a bachelor's in grade, correct?
Right, so that's the equivalent here. It'd be easier to spell it out. So
Yeah, if you want to say
task
the
book
Florida
completed.
State task book is completed and signed by the fire chief or designee, I
Yeah.
think that would be appropriate.
And that's, just to be honest, that's why they have to be signed by me now. Almost all of them are signed by me.
No,
Well,
that's-
when the original plan was with that, the task book wasn't even a thing yet. It was
Right.
just a matter of the equivalency was you
Completed the classes.
Yeah, had all your classes in place. So the task book was actually added an extra layer there,
Right.
which is fine.
Right.
so if y'all agree, I think we're agreeable with that, if you guys are.
Yep, if you want to do task book, that's fine. We'll
Okay.
just change that language.
Well, I can email you after we get Kristen to update the language, that way. we
So I can
have
keep this
something
copy
to-
and just kind of note on it? then?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's what I've done, and then I think we've verbally agreed to add that back, and then I can get some updated language to y'all.
All right, so we'll get that one and with that, fire chief, and that'll be for each rank going through, right?
Correct.
And-
Not for the bonus points.
Correct.
Just for
Test.
the qualification test.
Yep. So that's good. That one's pretty easy. Let's see which one would be easier. So the Article 10, hours worked, it kind of comes down to that time we call Fugazi, right? We
Yeah.
definitely term Fugazi leave there.
Chief, I'm going to tell that to you.
Yeah.
It's not Article 10, it's not a hard sell for me, it's your team that has to manage that. So that's 100% up to you.
So I know a lot of guys were hard pressed on the hour for hour, right? Because you get a guy that takes in a long cycle, 6 hours for a doctor's appointment. By that saying you can only use it in 12-hour increments, he can't just say, hey, I want to use 6 hours, and that maintains his half time, right? So if we can't do for hour, looking at doing something a little bit different, being kind of creative, thinking outside the box, because it used to be, now, we're paid FLSA standards right now, right? That's how we're paid. It used to be, whether you took it off or not, you got that leaving a long cycle. So, so if we, hour for hour would be a status quo, right? Or if you're hard up on the 12 hours, it's hard to manage, is there a different way we can do that? Can we go back to the way we used to do it? Or front loading some leave or something along those lines? I understand it's probably a nightmare administratively.
I think we discussed that last time. They just wanted to assess that.
How about we go, I know we've talked about this before. This is a management nightmare. That's what it boils down to.
Right.
And I would like to throw back out there of just giving you half of 72, that's your straight pay of half of 72, front loading you to that leave and get rid of this.
Okay, so 36 hours.
Does that equivalent to you guys?
We were looking at 48 because we lost going to the 72, right? We lost in that. So we were looking at 48 hours front loaded if we were going to do it. So you got it on hire, and then every October 1 is kind of what we were thinking about. So you got that annually put into your bank. That kind of gets us back to where we were before we went to this.
So say that one more time.
48 hours of
Annually.
annual leave
Front
upon
loading.
hire. And that helps our new guys that come in that have 0 leave, right? And then every October 1, every member gets 48 hours from it. And I have a proposal actually here with that.
Grabs it.
I don't know, may or may not have enough copies. I'm sure these are all- And that means we'll just be paid FLSA standards. So if we take off in a long cycle, and we're only at work 96 hours, we're only paid straight 96 hours and then leave for the other 24.
There's multiple copies.
Sorry.
I'm guessing we're probably going to end up having to come back to the table so we can discuss and,
If y'all want to discuss it, and I kind of, I mean, wages and holidays are going to kind of wrap together, right?
yeah, I figured that's why I was like, I can see him thinking really deeply right now. Wanna-
Yeah, because I wanted to get you there. I'm just trying to figure out what problem that may cause on my end. So,
I think administratively it's easier.
administrative is easier.
And that was the concern. So we could just think about it, and I don't know that we can caucus and get you an answer, but definitely get you something. Oh, I'm sorry, Eric. From my side, I'm leaning towards it. I don't know about him, so we can.
No, I'm definitely
Then
leaning
we
towards
can-
it. I just got to make sure because with other things that are still
Well, I
open,
was gonna say,
we're
let's
squeaking
open
so
a
tight.
discussion.
I got to make sure, because I'll be honest with you, what I'm looking at is, yeah, that's an additional 48 hours, that's great. but I gotta start being cautious about, I only have so much in overtime. If it has to go up after we negotiate these, how many people are off the trucks? It starts lending its hand into some of that, and I'm just trying to wrap all that in a 3-minute session is a little difficult.
No, understand, and that's what I say.
And I think that's why I'm saying it is, I think it's a worthwhile discussion. I think that we're not adamantly opposed to it, but I think it might be something we gotta take back and do some figuring on and then come back with something if we wanna go on to the next article.
So the holidays, hard up on 12 hours, not moving that at all. Or, even moving it, so it's back to the 12 hours a day. You know, I proposed 20.
What we
so
put
yeah.
across the table, yes, but that would be open for discussion upon the further wage discussions.
Can you tell us what the savings was by reverting that back?
So the original proposal, at the original wage was around 120, with the new proposal, it was around 260, 250, 260. So that was why we brought it back, to help accommodate the 1.5 to 1.7 on the other side. But like I said, this is one that we do see value in. We see what the other agencies are doing. But as a one-time here and now, it was, let's roll this back to do the wage proposal and bring it back as part of like a discussion later on.
Well, let's move it, because we can wrap that, and it might be a different sell depending on where we land on wages, right?
Yeah.
So that'd be something I'll have to take to the members. So we'll kind of put that one to the side, just like, and let's get to wages. So obviously our goal is we want to be in a scale. That's kind of interesting. As you see, most are in a scale, right? That's where we want to be at. Understand you guys can only get to 1.7 right now. I would really hope we can maybe find some additionals to make it to where we can get there. Did you run just an across the board wage at all? Like, would it be like a 20% or an 18 or 12 or 15? We just said, hey, we're going to do a flat 15% for everybody.
When I say I ran about 50 different analysis, I did. So to quote one of those, I don't know, I'd have to go back to all of my report. Janice has them all too, where we've just bounced them back and forth and back and forth
How
and back
hard
and
would it
forth.
to say, I got 1.7 if we did, whatever, 12 or 14 or 16, just a flat across the board for everybody right now? Because that would move the ball pretty good. It'll put, you got $13 an hour, 10's $1.30, so
we
you never
had
have
some
that.
discussions in caucus as well. We see some value in the scale. Obviously, we've said that before. We talked about, hey, what if we moved the starting wage here and just did this percentage, for everyone else? We had some of those discussions. It takes me probably 2 hours to do a full analysis. It's not a very long time, but I can't do it sitting in the back room on one computer
So
screen.
what
I've
I'm
got to
thinking
have my multiple screens and all of that. So I think that, again, I don't think we're done today.
What do you think?
So, go ahead.
Doing a flat across the board, right? Because that keeps everybody spread out. It doesn't compress the bottom to the top like we're running into, right? That's continuing over and over and over. And it doesn't say that the brand new guy's going to get a $3 raise where your 25-year guy is only getting 50 cents or 2% or whatever it may be, right? So if we just say, hey, everybody across the board is going to get whatever percentage that comes out to be, it keeps that gap, that spread, right?
Would that make it easier to move into a scale and have those conversations in the future?
Are you saying keep the $13 an hour income?
No, we moved the whole thing, right? So like just.
Yeah, I know what he's saying.
Yeah, just say it's 15%, right? 13 times 1.15, that means it'll move to $14.95 starting, and then, but everybody else would move that same percentage. So that way it keeps our gaps that we already have, and we're not going to compress everybody. But it allowed time for us to continue to work to get the funding allocation.
Kind of what we were talking about,
Yeah.
a few minutes in the back.
Yeah.
I mean, if there's appetite for that, what it would have cost out, what it would look like, I think that would be.
We'll cost that out, bring you something. Absolutely.
So I think there'd be a lot more appetite across the membership for something like that.
Whatever it takes to kind of get us. They're not going to pull it.
We want to work, but we also need like, we are, they said we are, it's hard to say we're generalized because we are specific. There are industry standards. Yes, there's independent fire districts, but that's what we're directly competing with across 4 areas, right? We can really go down south and pull county cops and everything else, and we don't want to do that because we know down south's got a lot more money.
Absolutely.
So directly what we're competing with, you guys have the numbers, right? And that's where we're trying to get. We just want to be competitive, and we don't want to lose our guys. I mean, you got to be your guy.
And I'm happy to come together any way I can come together. I'm not closed-minded. Again, I appreciate what you guys do. Y'all do a lot of hard work. We do a hard job. And I think the general public, they're supportive there from the general public, and we will be. And this will be you, I was telling them in the back. I've heard both ways. Let's quit doing something over here and move all the money over here. It's a little bit more difficult conversation than just, what is that? Is it 5, 5, and 5? Or is it 6, 6, and 6? Or is it 7, 7, and 7? I'm saying means a year over a 3-year period. I like the 7, 7, 7 myself, but we'll see. We'll see how that goes.
I mean, that rolls in a lot of factors. Okay, what do our wages look like? What is that man's plan? Where do we need to be at? Because we got to look at ISO ratings, right? We need to put people in places, the program apparatuses, all these things, right? And what does that potentially do to our citizens? That reduces insurance rate, and that's a hot topic. Insurance rates keep going up, and that's something we can directly affect by being funded appropriately, right? So that's something we need to really look at and take a hold of. Hey, by doing this, yes, it costs some money, but this is potential we can do for you, right? You guys in Paradise Beach, you're getting dropped. You're going up thousands of dollars a year in insurance, where we could put a station in there and members for $125, $150 additional a year on that fire at MSBU. So what does that funding look like with administrative staff that man needs right there? We're supportive of it, right? But he needs the backing. We got multiple stations that need to be redone. What did all that cost wrapping up in a couple of years? And then you look at wages too. We're going to go to $14 in October 1. We're going $15 October 1 and 26. And these other places around us already have plans. Pace is going to be, 10%, correct, for the next couple of years? You got Midway that's going to $17+ an hour in October 1 of this year, and they're going to be at 19. That's for a fire EMT starting. And they have a wage progression. I don't want to use South Walton numbers because again, we know they got a huge tax base, but they're going up 10% this October, and they're going up 8% the following October, right? So there's plans in place to go, and if we don't address those things, we're going to be behind, and we're going to be having the same conversation again. We're trying to present a holistic plan to set the groundwork, not only for now, but like you said, in the future. We want to put this in place now, and in 40, 50 years, that's still in place, and they're talking about CPI adjustments of 3%, 5%, 6%, something like that, versus $7 million increase. It's maybe $1 million or what have you over the life of the contract, versus we're trying to catch up from 12 years ago. And that's the problem. That's why it's $7 million. We haven't addressed this. We just continue to kick it down the road, throw a little Band-Aid on it here and there. It's time to rip that Band-Aid off. Let's put the groundwork in place and lay that future.
Let's turn it over to you.
Yeah. I think we have something that we discussed during caucus that, did you have any issues or with the numbers that were already presented? How about that? To start there. Just to start.
You mean the proposed rates?
Yes.
The issue with it is you move everybody in the bottom and do nothing for the people that have been here. That's the problem. So
you'd like us to focus more on the people that have been here.
Correct, and that's why we propose that flat rate, right? Because you look at a 13-year guy, they're going to get $1 and some change or whatever, depending on what that percentage is. And then that guy that's been here for 20 years, they're going to get a percentage on that. Everybody's getting the same thing, right?
Obviously, it's important. We understand the need
So
for
you'd
growth
like
in
us
the
to
department.
take essentially the 1.5 and apply it more to a scale?
1.7.
I said 1.5 to 1.7 because it was dependent upon the holiday article, and that's why.
Yeah, we were
That's
3.5 to
something
7 million on the other proposal, which is a broad gap too, right?
It's 4.4 for implementation, and then I did.
Look, I think the county can find $200,000. I'll just say that. I would probably guarantee you that can be
For the
worked
holiday
somewhere.
proposal.
So,
Obviously, you gotta do something to start it. You have to. It's the state mandated minimum, it's dollars. Nikki, I don't know if you found anything close to that at all, but everywhere else is dollars ahead. And they all, like you said, already have plans to continue progressing year over year. We're gonna need to hire more new firefighters just for the anticipated growth of the future, not to mention retirement, replacement, normal attrition, right? So we need to be marketable there because with the academy situation, hiring cadets, we're hiring both groups. We've done a few of these now. It has been, I feel like, fairly successful. Our last academy class was wildly successful comparatively, but we got to be able to attract them. These young folks are talking. They can see these numbers out there, as well. So yeah, that starting pay has to go. We have to address that. Obviously, can we get what you propose does put it up there in the top of the pile where okay, we're competitive there, but there is no plan year after year after that, right? However, our membership has made it clear, the more experienced or senior staff has made it clear that these little 2% hits here or there, they're not supportive of it in any way. And that's about the most polite and tactful way I can put that. Something has to be addressed because those individuals have taken it in the tail year over year over year. We've given up money to help the starting pay and help that recruitment aspect, and don't feel like the county's really done much of anything meaningful on the retention side of things. And we want to see some weight put towards that. How does that weigh out with 1.5 to 1.7? We don't know necessarily, but yeah, 2%. I think most people would look at the proposed starting rates and say, okay, that's a good start point or whatever, but the big question is, what do we do about those that are over that starting rate, regardless of what their over is? What are we doing? And 2% is not going to get it there, especially when there's no plan. Say, hey, all I can afford this year is the 2%. However, next year we're able to commit to this, or here's what we want to do. There's that follow-up isn't there. So yeah, however that plays out.
and just for clarification, if we come to something on this wages, this is an immediate implementation. We sign a contract and it goes into effect.
That's what
So
Well,
you guys
that's
have
the board
to,
ratifying.
yeah, so you guys have to ratify, and then once we get your ratification vote, then we take it to the board, and then it's effective the next full pay period after the board ratifies.
And then we would be able to come back October 1 this year and discuss wages.
We have a wage opener built in, yes. I don't know where we will be as far as, I know those discussions are happening for the MSBU, but yeah, that's part of the whole thing, end game, I guess, if you will.
Just trying to think of, talking, these are questions that I'm gonna get, can we guarantee, because, depending on how you read it, it says every year you get certain openers, right? And is it year that the contract's ratified, and that's the start date of those, or is it October 1 fiscal year?
So,
And I think we
Kristen might kill me for saying this, but as far as those openers are concerned, the technical legal language is in the term of the contract. This team, what I have found, we are not opposed to having those conversations when things change. So what I mean by that is, hey, we just got an MSBU approved. Can we have a conversation? Absolutely.
Well,
So we're not opposed to coming back to the table. What the legal language says is one time in the year of the contract. But again, we know things change rapidly. So if we are able to have a conversation based on something that happens, I think this side of the table is absolutely willing to come back to the table and have that conversation.
So, but we could write it in there to say that, this contract starts just say it starts on March 1st. We can say that we will open wages again, put a disclaimer in there or whatever, an article in there saying we will open wages on October 1 of 25.
Yeah,
We can agree upon
put
that.
that in there.
Yeah, okay, that way we're outside, because you said legal language says we should be able to do it, so if it goes March 1 this year, we wouldn't be able to do anything until March 1, 26, right?
Typically your openers historically, the language has stated that it would be 1 year after the ratification point. So So the problem with that is when does it actually get ratified? And that 1 year mark falling in the weird times, and it's really not great to be
Conversations that
talking.
we've tried to have too is having those labor management meetings when budget's happening, having those labor management meetings when we're having these conversations with our budget, what do we need? So those should be happening as well. I don't know if those are, I think you've been trying to have some of those, but having those conversations.
Those are definitely happening, and I'm very appreciative of that, right? Because I know we could have a very different relationship. I just want to make sure and be clear in that these are things we can do if for some reason we come across and say, hey, we can do this right now, but we're not waiting a year to talk. We can talk at this point in time and get the ball moving, right? That's what's important, so.
The problem with that is if the membership, we can get to a landing place and agree on something now, get something ratified, this contract goes in October 1, even if we state and agree that the wage portion would go into effect before then, all well and good. And let's say you guys are successful in moving the ball on the MSBU, those funds are still not collected, especially
Right.
MSBU. You're not getting all that October 1, you're probably not getting it all by the end of December caught up, right? There's always that float aspect. So still, GR, I would imagine, somebody's got to play big brother there. If that's the case, we know we have to land over here, so why can't we make commitments and get to where we need to be and have those meaningful offers, whether it's 1.5, 7, 3 million, whatever it is, because we know it's coming from GR anyway. We know we have to essentially make a proposed budget to put in front of the commissioners to get anywhere. He hit it on the head earlier. He's got to put his plan together as far as the growth of the department, and of course they have to decide, yeah, Chief, I agree, you need 5 new stations. No, you only need 2 or 3, so we're only doing that, whatever it is. But that proposal has to take place in order to give them something to look at. And what we're discussing is what we already currently have squirreled away in reserves. I didn't even know the fire department had reserves. I don't know how we have a reserve fund when we've got so many facilities issues that have been going on for 2 or 3 years. Some of the problems that we do have. How the hell do we have reserves? It makes no sense. Where do they come from? I feel like the reserve fund is probably just what labeled the check from GR that got moved over to the transfer or something like that. I'm not sure. But either way, we're discussing what we supposedly currently have. None of the enhancements that are needed for the organization, whether they're wage, operational, or other, are coming out of really the current thing, right? We have to expand. It's going to come from GR. So I guess at the end of the day, why can't we have that discussion and get to where we really need to be, whatever that proposal is, and take it to the big bosses and see where they land. And if they decide, yeah, let's fund this right now, it's coming out of GR. And then they have to decide, do you want to keep paying this burden out of GR, or do we want to adjust the MSBU? That's what we feel like is just holistically missing from this equation, is them making that decision. And we understand the compounding issues of that is, we're focused on this wage aspect, the contractual part, and then, of course, there's the other operational side of that. There's a whole other conversation, right? At the end of the day, regardless of what we do and agree, if we're pulling this money out of reserves of fire department, that's still a savings account. There still has to be an adjustment to incur more revenue to make that a recurring cost, right? So either that's coming out of GR or it's coming out of MSBU. So however y'all want to slice this up, we're still stealing money out of a savings account or from some other area that is not sustainable by the current MSBU. So if that's the case, we're going to continue doing business that way. Why are we not putting it to them and saying, hey, this is what the actual proposal is. We know it's got to come out of GR. Tell us yes or no. If they say no, that's too much of a grab. We're not doing this out of GR. Okay, fine. That's all you can do is be the ambassador, right? Mm-hmm. But at least you do have a backup plan here to say, well, I know I can at least capture this. That's where the frustration from this side comes from. Is did the big pitch ever even go to them? To say this is what we're after collectively, right? Like I said, at the end of the day, it's all coming out of GR. At this point, it is 100% all coming out of GR, right? So what's the difference let's create the proposed budget from what were our discussions here, the operational expenses that are gonna be needed, the enhancements or what have you, however they play out. It's all coming out of GR, they're front loading the bill, and then that's where you guys come in and you get to do your jobs working with the commissioners and determine how they want to slice that up, whether it's through the MSBU increase, however it floats out. If they want to play the politics game, hey, I'm up for election this year, I can't bite that off, you know, and we know how that mess works. Well, that's their responsibility to make those decisions. Sure. You know, so that's where we're at. We've been at this long enough, you know, over the years and everything. We understand, certainly we don't understand all the minutiae behind balancing the budget that Stefan has to wrestle and deal with. But I think we got a pretty good handle on the overall snapshot of how things work. So,
Do these numbers include the $1 million for the Paradise Beach Station when we included that?
sorry, the what?
Do these numbers include the $1 million staff, $4 million to build it? Yeah. And we don't have, I don't know if we have that. So I just want to remind y'all, we don't have a choice, we have to build it, that's another $1 million for staff.
And for 24, and for any other additional pieces of apparatus, it's about anywhere between 1 and 1.2.
That's kind
Station
of,
costs
What-
$4 million, give or take.
Yeah.
Right.
So
We pay.
with that being said, so the pay scale that, and wages that were proposed, was that based off of those stations hypothetically being in place, or what we currently have?
That didn't include
That's
any
my question.
vacancies. When I run numbers, I typically run.
Just what we currently have today?
Yes.
see, we can't, well, that's not how we can do business, because
No.
we gotta think about.
And then if you have vacancies, I send those numbers to budget and then they run that. And then budget has been asking and working with Chief Harrison on the upcoming stations and the staffing there. So they have that information. That's not included in the numbers that I'm giving you. I'm giving you, and I refer, excuse my language, but I call it butts and seat. I'm giving you butts and seat when I'm giving you numbers at the table. They work the behind the scenes numbers on, we've got this fire station upcoming and we got to staff it with 21 and that's going to be, whatever that is, BC, 2 lieutenants, whatever that is. They do that behind the scenes. I run in-seat numbers.
All right, let me ask you this on our wage proposal we gave. You said you gave 15%, so that was to everybody, correct?
Go back to what your proposal was. I think your proposal was if it wasn't 15%, they got 15%.
It's only if it resulted in a decrease in pay, or they were at the top of the, they were outside the scale, right? So,
Which nobody would have been outside that scale.
no, I don't think there's a.
They would have adjusted.
It was just
to their-
there in case there was that oddball person that was outside, they would be guaranteed the 15%.
So it's adjust to scale.
Yeah, just so,
That guarantees them 15%.
upon placing income to the proper step, so if they're in 10 years and it
If
was
that
only an
step
8
is in
year.
the final grade, then they get the 15%. But then you had a 5% to the entire scale.
For this year in October 1 and
So
then the
that-
following year.
Yeah, so that was included in that second calculation.
So the 7 million's to include the 5% bumps each year?
No, okay, for implementation without 15%, without any 15% was 4.4.
And that was putting people into the
Implementation.
appropriate step.
Putting them at the appropriate step. That did not include any 15%.
Okay.
So whatever that put them is where I put them. Nobody got a decrease based on that.
Rest my case.
That was the 4.4. Then my understanding was a 15%, which I thought that we clarified in the last session. Obviously did not clarify appropriately in the last session, but the initial implementation, regardless of a 15%, was the 4.4.
And everybody got a bump, nobody got a decrease in pay when they got implemented into the chart.
I'm pretty sure.
I'm almost 100% positive nobody meets that maximum.
I'm looking. Oh, so this,
Like I said, there might have been one outlier off the top of my head.
because I did this back in December. It's hard for me to remember exactly.
And that's where I'm going back, it's like, okay, 4.4, that's a lot more palatable than 7 million. Or we're kidding, did we pitch that? Hey, this is what it's gonna cost, this gets us into this is what it does, right?
I had two tables. One is implementation, which is 4.4, and then the second table was the 15% on top of the 4.4. So it was two tables. One if you want to do this, two if you want to do this. So the implementation table was the 4.4.
And that's what we're looking for right now, and then we had the 5% because those other, like, everybody's going up with this increase in pay, right? So that kept us competitive to everybody else. Now, maybe it's you go in there and say, hey, this is what it's gonna cost, 4.4 to implement, and then obviously that's a recurring cost. You know, the 5%, it's gonna be $5 million next year, 5.5 the following year, just throwing them out exactly, right? You know what those numbers are gonna be, and you know how people are gonna progress through this, and you can plan for that, we can figure that out. The commissioners wanna support that, or it's like, hey, no, we can't support that implementation of 4.5, but we're committed to 2.5 or $3 million. What does that scale adjust to look at? And, because that gives us that 40-year plan right there.
Well, and that's exactly what we were discussing in caucus was,
Right.
okay, well, that was 4.4, so then what if we change the table up and apply something different?
And that's what we're looking for, is like, if we can get,
But that takes a while to run.
I understand.
Right, like,
but if.
Right, frankly, that stuff should have been done coming in here today. Let's talk about options. You took 1.5 to 1.7 based off of pulling magical reserve funds that we didn't know existed.
my understanding, and Kristen can correct me, we give a proposal across the table. We can have discussions, absolutely, but we give a proposal.
Okay,
That's
well,
the
let's go with that. When you
proposal.
give a proposal, bargaining in good faith is taking that proposal and doing your due diligence with us, which for your role in that is costing it, right? And the personnel side, the rest of the team's role is to take it to the people that actually vote yes or no on it and get a yes or no. That still to this day has not happened. We're back at that core issue. It'd be like him sitting here
I think
today
it's
with your
unfair for you to
proposal.
say that, because you don't know what conversations happen behind the scenes.
Apparently y'all don't either.
Well, this is after 11. We gotta come back.
What days we have available coming up?
I have no idea. I'll have to get my aide to do the scheduling. We have to give a 2-week turnaround for the new people that do our, my brain just went completely blank, advertising, I'm sorry. We have to do a 2-week turnaround for the new people that do our advertising. We went from SunTrust to P&J per the board's direction, so it takes a little longer. So once we get my aide will schedule, she'll reach out to you.
All right. You guys got anything else for us?
I don't think so for now.